Hi, it's Kate McCoy, another editing tutorial for you. Case with newborns, his skin is not perfect. Let me zoom in so you can see what we're going to be correcting. This image is straight out of the camera. I've done nothing at all to it. And you can see baby has little pimples and flaky skin, redness, and we're going to deal with that while still having a natural look and not making the baby look plastic. The first thing I'm going to look at is my exposure, my white balance. I dealt with the white balance by doing a custom white balance during the session. And I always do that when dealing with newborns because their skin tones can be very tricky, and getting that white balance is going to really save a lot of headache later trying to edit, especially if you have a baby who's very jaundiced. This little guy is not jaundiced. He was 2.5 weeks old at this point, so his color in person was actually beautiful. We do have some redness that we're going to look at, but no yellow. But if he was jaundiced, as many newborns are, getting that custom white balance will really give us a head start in getting the right skin tone. So white balance is good. I'm also happy with the exposure. I use a strobe. I have a Digibee that does just what I need it for exposure. So I'm going to leave that. I do want to take care of my composition. It's not perfect. I didn't have the baby over onto the beanbag perfectly. As you can see, I've got this background mess going on. So let me move this out of the way so you can see. And I'm going to deal with that using the clone tool, the brush tool, and maybe some blur. Let's make a new layer. Get the clone tool. I want to make that nice and big. My opacity I'll put at maybe 68%, somewhere around there. I'm going to use the Alt key, and select around there and start cloning. And I keep clicking back. And since I'm working on a layer, I'm really not going to worry about going over the baby. I'll erase it. I like using a nice, big, soft brush. So this is not precision work right now. Now I've made a mask, a layer mask onto that layer that I did the cloning. So there's the layer with the cloning work. And here's a mask. So now using a paintbrush with black at 100%, I can zoom in, and I use my keyboard, the bracket keys, to make my brush large or small, and I just erase that right off the baby. I lowered my opacity so I can get this sloppy cloning over here. Using the keyboard, I use Control and the 0 key. Using the hotkeys on a keyboard will really speed up your work. So I have customized some of the hotkeys, which is really easy to do and will really speed you along. So I can see a little bit is still on the baby. And then by turning this on and off, it becomes very clear where I need to erase that. So that's good. And I am going to crop all this unnecessary area on the left away. Make this about like that. I'm going to leave it like that. Well, maybe I'll take it in a little bit. I want to have space to make this into a canvas or whatever size the client wants. So it may not be my perfect crop. but then I've got the room to go with any ratio on any print size or have space for a canvas. And I just went in when I was speaking to clean this area up. Okay, so that looks good. Let's take a look at the redness now. I'm going to use the hue saturation drop down menu to reds. This dopper, I'll click on a very red area. With the minus dopper, I'll click on an area that looks good. Bring the hue slider all the way over. Grab this small triangle on the right and drag it over until only the red areas are blue. And now I'll bring hue slider back until, well, when it looks green, I've gone too far. Let's bring it back. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to use a black brush to erase that off the lips. I don't like that. Flatten that. Let's zoom in very close. On a new layer, I'm going to use the spot healing tool, content aware, and just start going after each individual blemish. I do this on a layer because I work really quickly. So let's say, let me make a mistake on purpose. Let's say I blur that, but I don't catch it. I keep going, I keep working, and then I realize, oh, what a mistake I made. I can just make a little mask and erase that while still keeping the work that I did that was fine. Now, I'm going to just start over since I was showing you a mistake on purpose. Really small, can zoom in even more. It does a great job. I mean, Photoshop is pretty amazing. Takes some time, but I think the result is worth the effort than just running a skin softening action or something at a very strong opacity. I do use portraiture, and I'll run portraiture after I'm done with this. I still like to take the time to do this. For one thing, when there's red like these blemishes, that's going to get blurred in with portraiture and kind of make a splotch. Even if it's smooth, it'll be discolored. So I go ahead and use that spot healing tool about 1,000 times. This little guy's skin is pretty rough. Not every newborn needs quite as much retouching. He was getting older. A lot of times the breakouts happen past the point where I normally have babies in the session. This guy didn't get in for a session as early as I typically like. That happens sometimes. That's life. He did great though. He was not completely zonked out, but I could comfort him and lull him to sleep for every pose. When I moved him, had to go through the comforting and soothing process all over, but that's okay. So some scales over here. I'm not going to be too careful with the scales. I'm going to run portraiture and then take another look and see what I need to go after again. So let me zoom out a little bit, get that little flake. Let's take a look down baby's body. Just some redness, like small splotches I want to deal with. Okay. So, we removed a lot of red from this hand and arm that the baby is resting on. So now it looks almost gray. There's not very much color in it at all. I'm going to fix that by adding some warmth only in that area. So in the photo filter, there's warming filter, and you have a few options. I'm just going to go with the first one. I'll invert that adjustment, and I will paint it with a brush at like 46. Doesn't really matter, somewhere around there. I will warm up just down here. You don't want to use a brush at 100% opacity because you'll have a distinct line where you painted warmth. But just that little warmth, it really adds more life to what we ended up graying out by taking so much red out of the baby's skin. So that looks much better to me. I'll flatten that. And I am going to run Portraiture right now. That is a plugin that I really think is worth the cost. It saves quite a lot of time if you're doing a lot of newborns. I also run it on women. So I have my portraiture settings fairly low to start with. I always put a layer mask on that layer that I've run portraiture on. And then I will take a brush, a black brush at 100, and take it off the eyelashes. I like my eyelashes defined. I'm going to also drop the opacity down to about 84%. I don't want the baby completely fuzzy. Sometimes I'll even take the black brush at like 10% and just add a little, or take away a little bit of the portraiture effect. I like it on the background. Often portraiture will do a little smoothing on my blanket backdrops, which is just fine by me. So I think that looks really good and not plasticky. I'll flatten that. I'm going to add a little sharpness. This is a little action I have. A brush at 100, adding a little more detail to baby's lashes. Okay, well, let's get rid of this for a minute. I'm liking how that look. Baby does have reddish hair, so this looks authentic to life to me. I'm going to run an action that I have that I run on pretty much every image. It's called Plum Blossom. It's a velvet matte action. I put it down to 25%. And then I like to check my levels, bring in my shadows, maybe up the mid-tone, flatten that. Let's see what it looks like with a vignette. So I'll make a multiply layer with the marquee tool, create a border, feather the border at 250, hitting enter, delete, Control D to deselect the marquee, and let's reduce the opacity. So vignette, no vignette, let's increase it. It's very subtle. I think we'll go with the vignette. Let's do a little more matte effect. Drop the opacity. Okay, I like that. So at this point, I'm going to run an action that I created myself that just sharpens the image, puts it in the right color space for the internet, and puts my copyright information in the data info. So now this is ready to save. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at how I would edit a newborn image. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.